Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking with George because he has launched sort of like the pre-launch to his course, and he made about $6,000 in 3 days with only 800 or 900 subscribers on his newsletter, which is pretty insane. And so this episode we're going to really delve into that and understand the thought process behind that. We grill him a little bit on how he's going to provide value to those people and how he's going to continue to grow that course after it has launched. And so please enjoy this episode.
Okay, and I hope this will then generally lead into my, like a general discussion around different tools that we're all using to run our creator businesses. Because what I used for this was fairly minimal in terms of the things that are out there and the tools that creators talk about that are useful for their businesses. But this essentially started, it was one of those experiences I think we've all had where you spend about an hour with Ali Abdaal and it sort of kicks you up the business butt and something, you just take action on something that you've maybe been putting off. So I was in there doing some consulting with them a couple of weeks ago, and Ali was asking about what kind of product offers I have at the moment. And basically I have very few, more or less zero in terms of like medium ticket product offers. And over the last kind of year or so, people have gradually here and there been asking about if I'm going to put together some sort of script writing related ebook or course or something like that. And it's like the classic thing, right, where you think I don't yet have enough experience for that, et cetera, which is something I think we've all been through. And really freelancing has kind of started to get me out of that mindset a bit. And I'd be interested to hear how you guys feel about that kind of thing now, whether you still get that imposter syndrome. But essentially, he kind of put it to me like this. He was like, look, just put up a pre-orders page, like a waiting list page, see if anyone goes for it. If they do, cool, you can make it. If they don't, just refund them. So that's kind of what I did. So at this point, my newsletter probably had about 830-ish subscribers. So I put out a wait list to them, essentially giving them, and this is the way I framed it, was like, you've got a 2-day head start over the guys on Twitter. This is something I am offering out to you now, something that doesn't yet exist, but something that I'm planning to create. And if you are interested in pre-ordering it, you can do so now. But on Friday, everyone else is going to hear about it. So that's kind of the route in terms of the urgency that I was trying to create. So that was kind of the first lever. The second lever was the scarcity aspect. So my plan with this whole thing is basically I'd drafted out a rough structure of what I wanted to do with it. It's essentially going to be everything that I've learned as a scriptwriter in the last 2 years working for various different channels, from entertainment to education, about how to write better scripts basically and how to make more engaging YouTube videos. A mixture of written content, recorded content, still figuring that out. But what I really want from the first people who see it is to get some feedback. And I kind of want this feedback as I'm creating it, basically, to figure out what the biggest pain points are. And it's like this building in public thing where it's better to build something if you're constantly liaising with the people you're building it for. So that was the theory. So back to the scarcity thing. My idea was, I only want to give it out to a small number of people in the first instance so that I can really interact individually with each of the people that gets it. So the offer was basically there are going to be 50 pre-orders available. I really had no idea how big the interest would be because I probably get asked once every month or so, if that, about this kind of thing. So I wasn't sure whether I'd get kind of anything. And so 50 slots, I thought that's a reasonable amount so that if no one goes for it, it won't be embarrassing. I was thinking if I put up like 100 pre-orders and 5 people go for it, that'll feel rubbish. So 50 slots were available. And then the thing I did was basically tiered the pricing. So the first 10 people to sign up would get it for like a massive discount. So the full price would be $297. If you bought it early, you were one of the first 10, you'd get it for $99. The next 20 creators would get it for $129, and the next 20 would get it for $149. And so I sent this email out on Wednesday evening. I'd had it scheduled, and I went on ConvertKit, which is the email tool that I use. I'm sure we'll go into all of this stuff. But I just went on ConvertKit to check that the email had sent right. And this was like 2 minutes after it should have gone out. And already there was like $500 just sat there. So people had dived in immediately. Within the first 10 minutes, the first 10 were gone. It was one of those rare situations. I probably only had this that was like the second time maybe I've had this, where you're refreshing and just the orders are going up, up, up every time you refresh, which was crazy. And I had no real sense how many people would care that this email was going out. So that was a great start. I was then on a call with a friend of mine. We were doing some non-YouTube related writing for a couple of hours. And by the time we finished that call, I think about the first 25, 30 had gone. And then variously over the next 3-4 days, by the end of the week, in fact, the 50th final pre-order came in yesterday. So yeah, it was, I mean, a really good kind of proof of concept thing that there was a demand out there for it. And, you know, great in terms of a cash injection for the business. Now it's figuring out, okay, I've got a lot of people's money kind of in my account for something that doesn't yet exist. And then the pressure comes with, okay, now I need to actually make something that they like. I need to figure out the best way to liaise with the people who've put their faith in me early on to build something that is ultimately something that they want and something that I'm very proud of. So yeah, it was a pretty wild time. That first night made about 3,000. And yeah, by the end of the pre-orders, it was around $6,200-ish. So yeah, like very useful for a small business, I guess.
Yeah, very nice. And how many people are on the newsletter?
The newsletter now has gone up to about 950. So that was the other advantage that came with it, was that because people were signing up to the wait list, they're now kind of in my ecosystem generally as well. So it's been good for that as well. But I think this was like the main thing that I found from this was that I said to you guys in WhatsApp recently that I'd felt like my kind of Twitter presence had been lackluster recently, and my open rates as I've been gradually gaining more subscribers had kind of gone down maybe like 3-4% from what I was used to. And I had this sense that things were just kind of, I don't know, I was losing momentum a bit. But this was really a lesson for me in terms of the silent goodwill that you are gradually just building up by emailing people for free and putting out tweets for free and generally trying to cultivate that personal brand. So it was very reassuring to find that people were interested in what I wanted to make. And now I get to make it, which is exciting. And I would have been disappointed if I didn't get to make it.
And I think that connects to the Twitter views thing that kicked in a little while ago. We don't know how accurate the Twitter views are exactly, but it does help you see that there are loads of people reading and lurking and thinking about what you're saying, even if they don't like or engage or say anything. Often there's a big crossover in the Venn diagram between lurkers and people who are willing to pay money.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. There were some familiar names that popped up that I wasn't surprised had bought it, but then there were some people who maybe I'd interacted with 6 months ago who I'd like reviewed one of their videos or something and kind of thought they'd dipped in and dipped out. They'd come for the free review, they got what they wanted, and then they left. But it speaks to what you're saying, that they clearly are still just hanging around in the background.
And how many of those who've you've interacted with in the past ended up buying the playbook? Because I'm just wondering, is it that a lot of them are buying because they're sort of like your premium customers, as it were, like they're the people who enjoy your content, they're your fans pretty much. They've either bought one of your other templates or been on a call with you or paid you for a script. Because I'm just trying to work out, like, what does the trajectory of this look like? Is it once you've kind of got your super fans who've bought all of the pre-orders and this goes public, I imagine you're going to get at the beginning a huge injection of people because you're going to be banging the drum about it on Twitter and your newsletter and everywhere else. But obviously and this happens with all digital products, it will sort of slowly drop off over time. But I'm kind of thinking, like, who's this for? Is this for beginners, intermediates? Is this for YouTubers who are taking this hardcore? Sort of, what does this playbook look like? And who do you think is going to buy this in future?
The aim is to make this as in-depth as possible. So I don't think it's for, if you've not started a YouTube channel, it's probably not going to quite be right. Because ultimately it's an investment. It is, the first people to buy it could get it for $99, but when it comes out, it's going to be more like $300. Because I want this to be something that does go a little bit beyond the obvious stuff about how to make the screen look good and make your background not look rubbish, and how not to ramble on about things. I kind of want to go into different storytelling techniques and more in-depth things that once you know how to use a camera and edit something, how you can upgrade things basically and get them to the next level, and be way more precise about who you're talking to when you're speaking to your audience, and figuring out how to optimize your content basically. So that's kind of that first part. But in terms of then the people who bought it, more or less everyone that I've ever done a one-off script review for has bought it, which was an interesting thing. So that's like a £400, so whatever that is, for $500 ish at time of recording, investment. So people that had already made that sort of investment, I suppose for them this was a step down in terms of what they'd be willing to pay. If you're already willing to pay $500, like, chances are you'll happily pay less for something that could help take your videos further. In terms of people that I'd never heard of or had never interacted with me, I was going through a few profiles on ConvertKit, because it's the joy with ConvertKit, not sponsored, but whatever. You can look through individual profiles and see what which emails of yours that they've opened. And there were some people that I literally never interacted with who have been opening every email that I've sent for the last 6 months. Maybe that's a lesson in trying to draw interaction out of people better. That's probably something I'm not great at in terms of email. But again, it's that whole thing of like, it seems like either a long-term relationship silent, or a medium to long-term relationship where they've already bought something is the kind of prerequisite for this investment. There weren't many people who, in fact, there's none that I found at this point who weren't already following me or hadn't subscribed to me for some amount of time who bought it. So there's definitely some relationship building needed before that level of trust comes in.
Interesting.
Question, you mentioned, I think on WhatsApp, that you were thinking of mixing it up with including video and text in the guide course thing.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that balance?
I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. It was originally going to be more text-based with some video stuff, but the more I think about it, the more I prefer sending a loom than sending an email. I prefer talking like this than texting over WhatsApp. So I think it's pretty much every lesson module, whatever we're going to call it, will be a video lesson, and then the text stuff will be, I guess, an additional downloadable that you can read if you want. But I think being in front of camera and actually talking would be something that I haven't done for a while anyway, and would be pleased to do, and I think is probably going to be more engaging for people. I don't know. What would you want to unwrap if you'd bought a $300 scripting course?
I think what I would want to unwrap, this is just me. I prefer text because I feel like I can scan through it and jump around to different bits. I can also highlight and take notes on things like that a lot easier. Whereas I think everyone's had the experience of receiving a long voice note and then like listening to it, being like, oh yeah, this is really interesting. And then like a few days later, you're like, what was in that again? I didn't respond to it immediately. And now it's like a hassle to re-download all that information into my brain because I can't just scan and get the quick recap. So my preference would be text-based with video sections for bits that need proper like emotional delivery, like this is really important, guys, you need to do X, Y, Z because otherwise audiences will not blah. And in the text below I've showed you all the ways you can do that. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think it'd be similar for me. I enjoy video courses, but similar to Gwilym, I find that unless you're actively taking notes, which I find doubles the length of the course because you have to end up pausing, writing things out, play, and it feels like it's a lot more effort to extract what's in video form, but it's obviously a lot easier to consume that because it's like a TV show, you just put it on and you consume it. Whereas before I've had things where it's all text and I find it takes me ages to get through it because reading for me is a lot more it just requires a lot more of me to do that. And I find that when I have the time to binge on education content, whether that be watching videos of a course or reading a book, for example, or a PDF, my time there is available in evenings. And in the evenings, my eyes are just lazy. I'm tired. I don't really want to read. And so I prefer video content. But I feel like in this case, because you're dealing with scripts, I feel like part of it would be beneficial as also text-based. You know, I feel like having that mixture would be quite nice. And I think having sort of like bonus sort of downloadables in there, like scripts that you've written in the past, you know, that we can kind of go in and look at individually as opposed to just watching you mention it on a screen, would be quite nice. So yeah, I think like most courses I think are very good are the ones that have video content, text content, and then downloadables, you know, like worksheets and things that prompt you to really think about what it is that you need to do to move that needle. Because usually if it's a question, they're like, hey, you should think about this, and, you know, it's at the end of the video and you're like, okay, next lesson. You know, you never actually kind of really sit down and write the things out that you should do unless there's like a PDF that you can actually interact with. So yeah, I think just having like a hybrid model of a course is cool. I think people probably enjoy that more.
Okay, that's really, really helpful actually, because I think I definitely swung the complete opposite way to thinking this needs to be all video, and you know, I wasn't going to cut out the text, but that would definitely have taken a back seat. But that hybrid model definitely sounds cool, and maybe that's something I'll ask the people who were there, because this is the other advantage of ConvertKit is this is the first thing that I've sold through ConvertKit. Most of my other stuff that I sell is like through Gumroad or PayHip or Lemon Squeezy and like external things. But I've now got the group of them who've bought through ConvertKit are tagged with their own thing. But then the waiting list is still open and available, and people can join that to find out more. So I think I can both ask those who are already invested, who've paid, but I've still got this list of about 50, I think about 70 actually, other people who haven't bought it but are still interested. Might canvass their opinion through that.
Let me tee you up, George. Where can people go to find this course?
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Well, you can follow me on Twitter, but the newsletter is called Right on Time. I haven't actually got a custom domain for my ConvertKit landing page, so that's something I need to sort out. But let's see if we can find out what it's called. But essentially, the newsletter is called Right on Time. You can find it by just Googling Right on Time, I would hope. But maybe someone else can take the floor while I'm figuring out.
How many hours have gone into this so far to kind of earn you this amount of money and like the planning and everything that you've done so far?
I assumed that setting up the waiting list and getting the kind of prep for this pre-launch would be quite quick, because I thought, yeah, it's as simple as set up a landing page, tweet about it, see if people want to subscribe. But I think there was quite a lot more involved in it. So it was setting up the product, obviously, on ConvertKit. There were a few automations that I had to set up because I didn't want this initial email going out before something else that I was emailing about earlier in the week. It was then figuring out the pricing structure. It was then, again, even just figuring out, okay, how long before I mention it on Twitter do I want to mention it on the newsletter? And then there was a lot of last minute changes that had to happen where I'd set up this kind of system where I assumed that the main waitlist email that was going to go out on Friday, alongside when I told people on Twitter, was going to have to encourage people to retweet what I'd just tweeted about the very course itself, because I assumed it would need more marketing in order for people to buy it. But in the in-between time, between that Wednesday and the Friday, so many people had bought it from my main newsletter, I then basically had to rewrite the entire Friday launch email and rewrite the thread that I was planning to post on Twitter, because it was a little bit self-deprecating. It was like, oh, I don't know if anyone's going to want this, and I'm just doing this to see, don't be mad at me for trying to sell something. But then basically all the marketing had to change the day before to, okay, basically everything's gone, so I mean, buy it quickly if you want it, because it will probably be gone by the end of the week. So there was a lot more that went into it than I thought. Probably, I don't know, 10 hours or so of prep. But there are many more hours ahead to actually write
that
it.
was going to be my follow-up question, is how many hours do you think this will take you to film, edit course content, write course content, think about that syllabus and structure, and get feedback from people? Basically, how many hours have you got coming up, and how are you negating the downside of people kind of looking at it and going, oh, it looks interesting, but I'm not going to buy it. And then, you've put in hundreds of hours and no one's actually going to buy it in future. Like, how are you dealing with that? Is there sort of a strategy in terms of who you're going to write this for, how you're going to write it? Because my previous question to my past one was, who is this for? Is this for beginners? Is this for people who are intermediates or advanced? Because I know a lot of people create courses for beginners because there's unlimited beginners, right? There's always going to be people who want to start a YouTube channel, right? So I feel like the pool of people who would purchase something like this, but a slightly lower price, could be much higher than more of a premium priced product, but a lower end. But I'm also like thinking in terms of like, how can you make this product more worth it? Is like, okay, maybe you do go the premium option. It's your super fans and a few others who kind of buy it, and it is $400. But maybe that's the gateway for them hiring you. You can have something like a landing page where it has like a slightly discounted consulting call or script review or whatever, and then you upsell those people even more. So then actually the cost per student for that course is significantly higher than if you just went like the free or very low cost beginners route, right? So like I feel like there's loads of different options here, and that's why I'm trying to really grill you on this to kind of work out. It's great at this point with how much money you've made, but what does that look like in the long term? Like, how far have you thought ahead? How long will this take you? Because I like to think of these things when people create courses and products of like, is it worth your time? Is there something else that could be a little bit better that will move that needle? I think at this point, obviously, you don't have any product. So creating something is going to be good no matter what. But yeah, I'm grilling you on this because I was like, I struggle with this thing myself. I kind of go back and forth of like, what is the best strategy here?
Yeah. For sure, the upselling thing is a big part of it. So the only other thing that I do sell currently that's paid is a retention graph database called the Retention Hub. And that is very much going to be an upsell. And similarly, inside the Retention Hub, anyone that's already got access to it, when this launches, they'll get a discount on the course, essentially. Because the Retention Hub really is a step below on the ladder. So I think the way I view it is that free lead magnet is going to be something from the course. So something that I have currently already mostly worked out is 10 different common retention graph shapes and what they mean and how to fix them, basically, which is going to be in the course anyway, but that seems like an obvious and kind of easy to recognize lead magnet for people. So that's the kind of initial in. The next part is, if you want to go more in depth with retention graph analysis, you can get my retention graph database here, next step. Then the step up from that is this course. If you want to get kind of beyond the retention graph, if we want to talk more about the kind of context that influences a retention graph and more about the things you need to worry about beyond just thinking, why did people leave here? Why did people leave there? And actually get into the strategies that you can use to really, really start to improve your videos. That's when the course comes in. And that's where at that stage, again, we're going, because this is my whole thing I'm coming up against at the moment is, like I'm veering away from being the retention graph guy, which is kind of where I thought I wanted to go, because just of the awareness that it is so amorphous and nebulous and you can't really use them without context. And so I think one of the real things that I want to have in this course is real kind of scripting breakdowns and looking through the kind of like history of a Google Doc and seeing, okay, this is how I wrote the thing the first time round, this is how it changed, or this is how this client sent me their script, these are the changes I made and here's why. That's the kind of like more in-depth stuff that I want to get in the course. And again, the aim is to just try and upsell, I guess, at each of these individual points. But then, I think in terms of time that's going to go into it, my aim is to release it in July or August, partly because I'm going away for all of August. And I would feel weird sitting on this kind of like pile of people's money and not doing any work towards finishing it. I'm starting to feel, okay, actually, no, that's way too grandiose a comparison. I was going to say, I'm starting to feel like George R.R. Martin, who everyone wants him to write his next book. And I've had like 2 days of pressure rather than about 10 years. But the aim is to basically work on it for a couple of hours every day for the next 6-ish weeks. The example that I have is Kieran Drew, who recently, he's got a newsletter called Digital Freedom, and he's just published a course called High Impact Writing. And he first tweeted that he was like writing out in note form the structure of the course about a month and a half ago, if that. and he's pulled that together in not so much time. And I think the joy now with where I'm at is that I'm able to charge kind of enough for the client work that I'm doing. And I've noticed this recently, that I'm able to reduce the amount of time I'm working with clients. And I like working with clients, and that's kind of the bedrock of everything that we do, right? But not having to work every hour of the day on client work frees up a lot of time for this stuff. So the aim is to have it out in August after, what's that going to be? 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, 10 hours, 20 hours. That seems a bit low. Let's assume 30 hours-ish.
What is your thought on spreading it out evenly across 6 weeks or like a couple months versus putting aside like 4 days where you're like, I'm going to destroy this thing and I'm going to make the course in 4 days and everything will come together? Like a sprint system, right?
That could actually be quite good. I guess it kind of, again, it depends on the needs of the client work to make sure I don't fall behind on that. But certainly that initial burst before I put the waitlist out and working on it did feel good. So I think that might be, because it's like any good idea, right? It's just, if you sit on it too long.
But I've heard that some people who've done this have kind of said that it's like a double-edged sword with like sort of having a course or some sort of product with a landing page that people can buy early before it's even been created, because you have that moment of, oh, this is amazing, and then that dies. And then you're like, oh, now I've actually got to do the work, and you don't get that funness from it. Whereas it's like I'm building something, then I release it and it explodes, and it's great. And so, yeah, I can imagine that can be interesting to kind of like deal with that. So yeah, you have to be kind of disciplined. I think taking that approach of like 2 hours a day, every single day until it's done is right. But I would say if I was in your shoes, I wouldn't do what you're doing, where it's like, oh, I go away in August, I want to try and get it done by July, because like we're midway through June. I don't know how long this will take, but if it was me, I would think, I'm going to make sure that this course is the best it can be, and if it comes out in September, I'm okay with that. You know, because I feel like if people have paid a significant sum of money to make this course good, to buy this course, I would want it to be like the best it can be, especially if it's going to be a course that lives on your landing page for the next like 2-3 years, right? There's no rush really to get that done, especially if you've got video content that needs to be edited and polished. And I don't know, I just feel like I would take my time with it and make sure that it's very good, rather than say I'm going to spend the next 3 days solid on it, or I'm going to spend 3 hours over the next like month. I don't know, that's just my opinion, but I'd be very nervous around putting out something just because I've taken people's money. Like, I think if they've bought it with the understanding that you haven't created this yet and you are going to create it, I think that they're okay with waiting for that product, because otherwise they wouldn't have bought it. You know, so whilst you have pressure, I guess that's good because it's going to make you work. But I don't know, I just wouldn't rush with it. Because I know even someone like Olia, I remember like years ago, he said, I'm going to write a book. And he put up a landing page, and I think people bought it, and he still hasn't released. And that was years ago. But I think he just like refunded everyone because he was like, oh, I changed my mind. I didn't actually want to do this thing. And like he held that money for like a year, I think. I might be completely wrong on that. But he did hold it for like a little while. So I would definitely take your time with it, make it good, rather than just pushing it out because you feel pressure.
No, I do agree with that. And I'm in the position where my thought process is that I am not re-releasing this to everyone until it reaches that point. I think really, now you say it like that, and now I think about it, I would like something that the people who bought it can see around that time, something that isn't just a pile of notes, and something that I can then get feedback on and iterate on. Because the impression that I currently have, and the kind of rough aim that I have, is that I won't re-release this for anyone else to buy probably until nearer the end of the year, because I want it to go out to everyone who currently has it and to get serious feedback on it, and with the potential then that I'm spending another month or two making those edits, maybe even re-recording some stuff. So yeah, it's a weird, and this is, maybe I've gone like halfway one way or the other here, because it's not going to be, I want people to see it that have bought it maybe before it's completely ready, before I go way deep into like like editing everything to look perfect in terms of text and video. If there's stuff that people want me to change.
This is, again, like my thoughts, and I have no experience in this stuff, so please disregard it all. But it's like, you could basically put up the syllabus to people, email them on a weekly basis, this is where it's going, and get them to constantly feedback before you even record or write something. Because I think if you're going to basically put out like an okay, very good, but not like the best sort of quality lessons because you're still trying to get some feedback to then implement, it's like you're having to do the work twice. You're going to have to put out like a basic version of the course, and then you're going to have to go and reshoot all of the videos again when you get the feedback, rewrite all of the lessons once you get the feedback. Whereas can you not measure twice and cut once? So be very, very specific on what this specific lesson is going to be about. But this is what we're going to cover, and give it to them in like bullet point form, and get a lot of people to say, that's exactly what we want. I actually want you to talk about this thing. I don't really care about that. And you refine it, and then you go and make something that's very, very good. Like basically the final version. Because if you have 200 people who are however many it is that have bought this, that's enough people, right? Who've bought it to get enough good feedback. So I feel like you can get this product very close to finalization. And some of the final feedback that they can give you would be like additional lessons that you then release for the real launch with everyone, when everyone can get it past pre-launch. I don't know. I just feel like it seems like you're going to double the amount of time potentially by kind of putting something out in the next month, and then spending 2 months, 3 months kind of fixing everything to make it even better, if that makes sense.
No, I see what you mean. Maybe I explained it slightly incorrectly. That is very much the aim as well, is to be interacting with them every single week. After this, in fact, I'm recording something for the people who've already bought it while my camera gear is all set up. So I think, yeah, it'll be a kind of hybrid of both. I think I just imagine that once the final thing releases, I'm okay with the idea that there might be tweaks that take me a bit longer. But you're right. I think if I'm interacting with them regularly enough along the way, hopefully it wouldn't be necessary to completely revamp the entire thing. But we will see.
One thought I would say as a slight pushback against making things perfect is that it's like I imagine you found with client work as well, that often if you just try your best and the first draft or the first thought that you come out with is often like very good and people are impressed with it, and it's so easy to overthink things, especially as a writer. Maybe the reason Olia didn't release that book in the end was because he felt like he can always wait and write a bit more later and get it really perfect, and then nothing ever happens.
Yeah, that is another good way of looking at it.
But yeah, I suppose that's the tricky thing with having lots of video content, is that it's much harder to go back and improve.
Yeah, I think that's the key point. Like I would try and leave the video for as late as possible when you're making this. Yeah, like Gwilym says, writing lessons is significantly easier than having to reshoot and re-edit everything. Yeah,
cool. Thank you very much for your thoughts, chaps. That is.
It'll be interesting to hear over the next few months how it's going and where you end up. I'm excited.
We'll see. And I think, I hear what you're saying as well about the kind of the time input and how many people will then buy afterwards, because the retention hub did see exactly that same thing, where now it's like one every so often, whereas before it was like one or two a day. But I think for me, it's like it's also an authority building kind of exercise, where just having something out there like that is just good for the personal brand as well, and something that it's already making me think about and kind of codify things that I already kind of have in my head, but not straight.
That's what I thought. It's a good exercise to force yourself into writing, a book or a course. You have to think of it in terms of a structure of like, okay, if I was explaining this to a beginner, where do I have to go down to in terms of the foundations, the fundamentals, and build upon that. You can't just start off anywhere. So you talked about it being sort of useful for like a brand building, authority building piece of content. Why did you charge for it instead of making it free? Is it simply because you're going to spend a lot of hours on it and so you want to get paid? Or is it the case that you just wanted to make money? Or sort of like, why did you not make it free? Because if it's like the best resource, the scriptwriter's playbook, it's completely free, and a lot of people used it, and that could then lead to more people purchasing the retention hub or any of the other upsells. What was the thought there between, in your value ladder, not having something that's relatively, close to being free, if not free itself?
I mean, I think it's just in terms of what value people will get from it versus the stuff that I do give out for free. So like the main thing I have is like a script writing template that I use. And that's had over 1,000 people download it, and like that's all well and good. But I'll put out a blast on Gumroad, which is where that is downloadable from, to any new people who've signed up since I last did a blast. And where I'll say I run this newsletter. If you're interested in learning more about retention and script writing, head over there. And there's some amount of crossover, and it may be like a 5-10% success rate when I send out something like that. But to be honest, for the amount of time that I want to put into this and how good I want it to be at the end, and I don't know, I think it's the insights that are going to be in it from working with people that a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to work for. It just doesn't make sense for me to give this away for free. In terms of like, this is ultimately, it's a business at the end of the day. You've got to sell something, and there's almost nothing else I could think of that I would be comfortable charging this amount for. But I feel like for the value that it would hopefully, once it's written, provide, this is kind of a no-brainer. This has got to be my mid-ticket item.
Yeah, I also feel it'll select for people who want to really seriously go through it and read it and get a lot of value out of it, because charging for something automatically increases the perceived value, right?
Yeah.
And what you want, I assume, is not only to make money from it, but also to get really engaged creators to read all the way through it, think, I really like George's stuff. Let me either work with him or recommend him to people that I also work with.
Sure.
And yeah, I think it's a good option.
Yeah, I mean,
and you've been giving, sorry to interrupt, you've been giving out like enough value on Twitter and your newsletter for a long enough time that I feel like you've spread that net pretty wide already in the field of people who are interested in YouTube, script writing and retention and that. So I think you've got a lot of them already.
Yeah, that's the hope. I think it's ultimately as well like being able to do something at a wider scale. So I really like what I do in my newsletter, and I'm glad that it helps the people that I review directly. But I think then the translation between the people whose videos I've reviewed and the people who then read it is probably a bit less, because each week I'll review 3 different videos and there'll be very specific takeaways from those bits of content, but they may not be relevant every week to somebody who's reading it. And I'm at the point where I want to try and deliver more teaching and more advice at scale. And the aim with this playbook, again, is to make it something that is applicable across all different types of niches, across entertainment and education, regardless of what you do and who you are. So that's just something that's satisfying to me. And I love getting DMs from people who I've reviewed and they say, I've implemented this and it's improved my videos, and the video views are going up, and the retention was a lot flatter this time because of this. There was one like ridiculous testimonial I got where this guy was like, I implemented stuff from your newsletter and I made this new chess channel, and the first 2 videos got 100,000 views or something. So I'm like, okay, that's also a lot of you, probably mainly you, but it's like, this is crazy. Like that's when you see reflected back at you what you're actually giving out, and that's what I really love. And I think that this is an opportunity to give that out in a way that's hopefully very useful to lots of people, because ultimately, like, I don't know, I really like script writing, I like the people I work for, but I can only write so many scripts in a week, and it's like, what is the ultimate goal beyond just writing scripts for people? And I do like the idea of teaching and disseminating advice and seeing other people do well from the experience that we've managed to get, Yeah,
that makes complete sense.
All right. Thank you guys very much for all your thoughts and advice. This is all helpful, very helpful. And I hope this has been a useful discussion for anyone who is thinking about launching something, maybe doesn't have the confidence to, isn't sure whether or not anyone's listening or watching. For transparency, I think at the time of launching had about 3,000 Twitter followers, or 3,200. And 820-ish newsletter subscribers, and it's generated a very nice profit for the business. So if you're around there or even slightly less, like, there's a good chance that somebody will be willing to pay for the knowledge that you have, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
It was really useful to know. It definitely gave me some food for thought moving forwards when it comes to creating educational courses and books and things like that. I definitely think it's good advice, to have that pre-launch to validate if anyone's actually interested in it. So yeah, I'm definitely going to steal that going forwards.
Yeah, and I think another lesson as well is that you've been putting stuff out for at least a year now, George, right, on Twitter. And that is like the slow ramp that has built an audience that has made this possible. I would say like a lot of this information was already in your head a year ago. I mean, not all of it, obviously, but a lot of it. But it would have been hard to start from nothing. So you've been doing a great job with the personal brand stuff first, and now this is possible because of that.
Yeah,
cool.
Thank you. Yeah, that's true. Very true.
All right, I guess we can wrap it up there, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Cool. See you later. Bye.